Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for driving business value with modern data governance. Joining us today will be our Semaphore team as we look at all things data governance, semantics, and how Semaphore can support your data governance journey. Myself, I'm a senior customer success manager here at Progress, but joining me will be Philippe Delorme, senior account manager, looking after a number of Semaphore customers, and Steve Ingram's sales engineer manager, who has a host of experience developing Semaphore with customers over a number of years. Quick disclaimer, as always, these are prepared by Philippe and Steve in a personal capacity. They don't express opinions or representations of Progress Software Corporation. Please feel free to pause this if you want to read this in more detail. But I'd love to hear your questions today, and if you do, please pop them in the chat. We'll get through to as many as we can throughout this. If we can't get to your question, then we'll make sure that we get the right people to follow up with you to get you the right information. So, data governance. It's a specification of a decision rights and accountability framework to ensure the appropriate behavior, evaluation, creation, consumption, and control of data and analytics. That is the Gartner definition of data governance there, but it means a lot of things to a lot of different people, both in IT and within the business. But there are some things driving change in this area. More than 80% of companies worldwide will face modern data privacy, new regulations that are coming through, not just GDPR, but a host of other privacy regulations that are coming through. And the share of the CDOs who data governance has become their top activity has increased 50% year on year. I can guess why this is driving this, and my guess would be the proliferation of AI tools, LLMs, ChatGPT, Bard, or Gemini now, and these things are really getting people to look closer at their data and how they govern their data across their business to ensure they get the best results. But it means that new projects are going to be started, new things are going to be looked at in the world of data governance. But Gartner reckons that 80% of organizations seeking to scale their digital business will fail because they're not taking a modern approach to data and analytics governance. This is really important. It's kind of changed the way you view data governance in order to make sure you're having the biggest impact and making sure that the projects that you start come to completion for everyone. So we'll start off by defining data governance, the benefits of it really, and the goals. Data governance isn't in isolation. It's not a thing that exists in somewhere else in the business. It can affect your day-to-day life. It affects data quality in your organization. You can help identify fixes and errors in your data sets to make sure that they're reliable, trustworthy, and that you get the results in the analytics and the reporting you're looking for. It's standardized definitions across your organization, agreeing what you're going to call things and what that means to your organization for a greater understanding of not just your area of the business, but everyone else's. For information compliance, to answer those regulators, the new regulations that are coming through, and to meet your own rules and standards within your organization. Democratize access, a really important one. You're trying to achieve a balance between the control of your data and the innovation that you want your teams to have with this data, whilst at the same time preventing errors and misuse within your organization. And then finally, it's risk management, increasing transparency and offering accountability whilst reducing the risk of fines and reputational damage from GDPR and other regulations that are out there. So there are a couple of questions and a couple of thoughts in terms of that crop up quite regularly from our customers. So the first one is, does your current data and analytics governance model align with your strategy? Can you take a line through your strategic goals and objectives in your business right through to the rules that you apply to your data? And secondly, where do we start when we want to evolve our data governance strategy? Are we looking to evolve it in isolation, or are we looking to evolve it involving the entire company and how we can then innovate with that data whilst applying those data governance rules? Philippe today is going to be joining us. He's going to talk to us about the importance of semantics when looking at data governance, give you a brief overview of data governance in the world of semantics. And then we're going to be joined by Steve Ingrams, and he's going to give you a really deep dive into Semaphore and how it supports data governance. So Philippe, it's over to you.
Thanks, Philip. Yes. So on the agenda today, I want to take us through the current business context and data challenges that our clients are seeing, their need for a semantic layer and what that solves for them, as well as Semaphore and how it fits into the data governance or modern data governance stack, its integration with it, and then we'll move into a demonstration by Steve Ingram, and following that, some Q&A. So looking forward to it. Let's dive right in. So today's business challenges, well, we're all facing fragmented data silos. These are, application driven often, but it also means that our knowledge is actually kept in silos. So the understanding of that data doesn't flow freely between departments, and even within departments doesn't even flow that well, which means that we're faced with numerous changes within the landscape, AI being the biggest one of them. And how do we meet these challenges going forward with the standard way of doing data governance? It's becoming more and more difficult to do so. And we want to bring about some different changes in thinking and how to approach these things. So let's take a look at our traditional application-centric view of the enterprise, which is that data is often treated as a byproduct of these applications. Each application is building its own data, it's segmented, it's siloed, it's used within that application. But oftentimes what people want is a holistic view. You can think of Customer 360 as the most obvious example. While that information resides in a number of different systems, and when we want to actually create that connection through a new digital initiatives, we'll create data warehouses, etc., to kind of combine that information, build those visualization reports, and we'll be pulling information from multiple different sources as an as-needed basis. But then all of a sudden our needs change. We need a new report. It doesn't quite have the same requirements, or more than likely, the original report was naming things consistent with the primary user's way of looking at the world, and the second user, well, he's actually looking at things differently altogether. And so it's a proliferation of different connections between different systems that basically looks like this. And you can understand that the complexity of managing all this, and this is actually a real world example, is daunting, if not impossible. So how does modern data governance really apply here? And how can it apply? Well, data is also useful when it's protected, when its context is given, when its content and quality can be trusted. And if you're going to do anything with that previous diagram, you need to keep this in context, and in order to really successfully implement a new modern data governance approach. And what our clients are telling us is that they need a semantic layer in order to standardize the way that they abstract the organizational complexity, the business complexity from the actual data and knowledge. And that semantic layer is going to play a crucial role in governing the bridge between the raw data and the business user, making it more understandable, more consistent, and more usable. What does that start to look like? Well, as we get into modern data governance benefits, we're going to see that a semantic AI approach or platform will provide us with a way of presenting data in familiar business terms, which means that it'll be easier to understand and access, but also reduce our dependency on IT as a business user. It'll support our consistency and standardization through standardized metrics and definitions of those metrics. It'll also facilitate our data integration and interoperability through the data sources abstraction and the data contextualization. So all of this is basically delivered through what we would deem or call a semantic knowledge graph. It is the ultimate linking engine for enterprise data. It automatically generates views of heterogeneous and initially unconnected data sources. So it is the ultimate linking engine for enterprise data, automatically generating views for siloed and individual pieces of information and data. A semantic knowledge graph really mirrors the real world relationships and contexts that exist. It provides rich data contextualization, it provides enhanced data integration, and it improves data discovery and accessibility, to name but just a few of the advantages of this approach, or the semantic knowledge graph. Of course, some Progress Semaphore delivers on this by gathering, collaborating, and sharing knowledge between stakeholders, partners, and clients. Its ability to take that knowledge and to leverage it to bring meaning to your data silos through classification, and to push out that knowledge into different individual platforms in order to make improvements to operations, but also bring meaning to less meaningful analytics. The Progress Semaphore promise is to deliver on this knowledge graph, and by providing modeling, classification, and integration of a semantic layer with the following key characteristics, which a Semaphore is well known for. It's ease of use, so that you don't just have IT people that can manage it. The flexibility to actually be built over time, so it's not a big bang approach where you have to wait for everything to be ready, but you can actually add on and iterate as you go along, providing consistency through a common language and harmonizing those definitions across the enterprise. A key way of getting knowledge throughout the enterprise is to actually maintain the way that people call things per department, etc. And covering all types of data. And where this is going is actually an agile data-centric approach. In a data-centric architecture, the focus is really on ensuring that the data is accurate, accessible, and usable across different applications and systems. As we saw before, everything was application specific. With semantics, we're able to facilitate this data-centric approach by providing some key differentiators here. Standardized data interpretation, enhanced data integration, improved data quality and consistency, rich data discovery and accessibility, and of course, the support of advanced analytics and AI across domains in the enterprise. To start your journey on a semantic data framework for data governance and metadata governance, you need to start with the basics, which is a common data definition, a data catalog, and a business glossary. The data inventory definition represents the format of the data. The data catalog really models the relationships between the systems and the data that they contain. And the business glossaries are what are provided by the business, which are the definitions of that data and why it's necessary, its value that it has. The way that this is mapped together is through a semantic data catalog that takes the definition, maps it through relationships through to the data catalog and the business glossary. Obviously, you don't need to go through the process in the way of the arrows are indicating. You can actually traverse this graph in any which direction, either starting at the other end or even in the middle, in order to achieve the connections that you're looking for, providing you with a better understanding of your data and therefore a better governance. like to finish off with this quote, which is by 2026, 20% of enterprises will use a single data analytics governance platform to unify and automate discrete governance programs. Why the rising importance of data governance programs? Probably because data governance is not just about rules and compliance, but it's also about collaboration and empowerment. Data governance fosters collaboration across your organization so stakeholders can access accurate and relevant data and empowers them to make informed decisions. With that, let's take you to a demonstration by my colleague, Steve Ingram.
Excellent. So thank you, Philippe, and indeed Philip. So yes, I'm Steve Ingram, and I'll be going through Semaphore in the context of semantic data catalog and data governance. So during this demo, really going to focus on the sort of benefits 2 and 4 from the list that Philippe had. So standard definition and democratized access. So really how we can apply standards right across your estate. So it doesn't matter what you're trying to manage, because we're using a semantic approach, we're able to define all the artifacts, all the entities that make sense in your organization, and show how they can be linked together and how they can be managed towards building that enterprise knowledge graph. But obviously, once you've managed your standard definitions, what you really want to do is actually use those for information compliance, use them for enforcing data quality, and then that's what I hope to show you during this demonstration. So before I go much further, I just want to recap what we mean by a semantic data catalog and indeed distributed governance. So a semantic data catalog provides that holistic view of your information assets, of your estate, of your infrastructure. And so by doing that, it's covering all 3 levels of the sort of data governance, data management model. So you have the physical model, where the data inventory represents how the data is organized. Your logical model, which is all around how those assets are managed. And then indeed the conceptual model, so the business glossary, defining what the concepts that are important to your business. And what the semantic data catalog is doing is allowing all these different components to be managed by different teams and then brought together in a way that makes them usable. It's the holistic view. But the most important thing about a semantic-based approach, as opposed to other approaches to data governance, is they're typically data-driven. So they're very much looking at the inventory and then building up from there. Whereas the semantic approach, you could think of it as starting with the business glossary. So starting with the business problems, working your way down. Or as Philippe said, starting in the middle with a logical model and working your way up and down as required. But you aren't forced to itemize all your assets prior to actually looking at how your business uses them. You can take an approach for where that value is the greatest. So let's see how you would actually go about doing that in Semaphore. So I'm going to switch over to my browser. And now we have Semaphore. So this is running on one of my demo servers. And so this is fully featured. This has all the capabilities of Semaphore. We have the modeling piece, the collaborative management of what we call knowledge models. We have the use of those for classification and enrichment and some of the data quality issues, which I'll come on towards the end of the demonstration. And we also have the semantic integration piece, which is all about making these definitions available to the wider organization. Now, I'm going to be focusing on what we call the Knowledge Model Manager, or KMM for short, which is our power user tool. But also during the course of the demonstration, I'm going to be showing you how we can leverage subject matter expertise using what we call the Knowledge Review tool, which is a simplified interface. And then later on, I'll show you how we can actually process documents to actually use some of those definitions. But before we go any further, let me just open up KMM, which is Knowledge Model Manager. So here we are. This is KMM. It is, as I said, it's a power user tool, but it's designed to be at an editorial level rather than requiring PhDs in information architecture and information science. So all these colored boxes are, let me show you a few more. All these colored boxes are knowledge models. They could be taxonomies, they could be ontologies, they could be controlled vocabularies. One of them is a semantic data catalog that contains a business glossary, data inventory, and a data catalog. It doesn't matter what they are or what domain they're modeling. They're all managed the same way. They all are RDF graphs, which is using SCOS, which is a W3C standard. Now, this user can see everything. As I said, Semaphore is a collaborative platform. You can lock down models to particular audiences. So let's look at particularly what we got for the semantic data catalog. So as I showed you in the slide, we have the semantic data catalog, and that consists of a data inventory, a data catalog, the business glossary, and some other definitions which I will come on to. And these are all individual models, but they are linked together to create this semantic data catalog. So let me open that up now, and let's show you what we mean by a knowledge model. So this is the full semantic data catalog, and there's an awful lot here. I don't intend to go into too great detail, but let me just show you how the sort of information is modeled, is managed. So let's this model has a SharePoint intranet. So let's look and see how the SharePoint intranet is defined. You can see it has various properties, has sort of labels, there's definitions. We could define the scope, we can show the access point for it. But more importantly, what we have is a number of relationships. And if you are visually inclined, we can show you how these appear, and we can even use these for navigation. So we have the SharePoint intranet, we have the team that manages it, we have a regulation that applies to it, so it needs to be compliant with GDPR. We have the systems it's part of, and then we also have the information that's being held. So this itself, the SharePoint intranet is an artifact at what we call the logical model. So it's in the middle of our semantic data catalog. But competitive analysis, we can actually move over to that. Now this is an artifact of our glossary. So this is a business glossary. Within our semantic data catalog, it's quite straightforward to have relationships linking right across the layers of the model. So this is a competitive analysis is a term from the business glossary. It's a function that's performed by a team within the organization. But what the glossary doesn't store is where is that information maintained. The information is maintained in the SharePoint intranet, and it's relevant to the sales and pre-sales teams. And again, these are artifacts from the logical model. So what semantic data catalog gives you is democratized management, but this full holistic view right across the organization. Right, so let's actually now look more at that democratized management, and let's look at the data inventory. So I'm going to leave this model, and I'm going to go back to, I'm going to look at our data inventory. So the data inventory is actually maintained by the IT department. So let's actually log in as IT and see how they view the world. So I'm going to log out from my user, log in as IT, probably can't guess what the password is, and then good. So now we are logged in as IT, and we have a much simpler view. So we can see the business glossary, data catalog, data inventory, some definitions, but you'll notice this big sort of I symbol here. Now this means that while I can see the model, all I can do is make changes. So let's have a look at the data inventory itself. So while we're here, and what do we have in the data inventory? Well, literally, it's a definition of the artifacts in your organization. So we have just a simple illustration in here. We have two applications. We have the Microsoft Northwind database, and we have which is it's a relational database, and then we also have an HR360 application. So Northwind is a SQL database. So you have in your application, you will have a number of tables, and the tables themselves will have a number of properties. A number of columns, and the columns will have properties. Can it be non-null? What length will it be? Is it a primary key, etc. But obviously, as I said before, the beauty of a semantic approach is that you aren't constrained in what you model. So while this is a relational database, we can also link to multimodal databases. So HR360 is an application, but it's not a relational application. So instead of having tables and columns, what we have is JSON entities and indeed JSON properties. And again, we can, using our knowledge model, no problem, but we can quite happily adapt our model to accommodate that. So it doesn't matter what we're modeling, what we have in our data inventory, the model can be built up. But you will notice that I can't make any changes to this. So even though the IT department owns the data inventory, I haven't got complete access to change it and make a complete mess of it. And we do that's because we have a governance system which is based around what we call tasks. So while the master model is locked down and I can't make any changes to it, what I can do is I can make changes through a task. So now you see we have exactly the same information, but now you'll see I can actually make changes. I can add, I can delete, I can make changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import I'm going to add a new application. It's a database that we use in pre-sales called the Traveler database. And I'm going to import that using a spreadsheet. And I have a wizard for that. So let me select import, select import spreadsheet. And I have a template defined. So it's a format I've imported from previously. So I have a standard template defined. Otherwise, I would use the wizard to select how I wanted each column in the spreadsheet to be handled. So let me press import. And now I'm going to drop in my database just for completeness. This is the format, so it's relatively straightforward. It's one row per item. Every item has a unique ID, and then various properties in columns for each of those items. So I'm going to drop in my spreadsheet and say next. Select the concept scheme where it wants me to put it, and I'm going to put it under my schemata. Hit next. And here's the hierarchy, because it's between column level 1 and column level 3. These are the properties. This is how I want the columns to be handled. So each item has a class name from that column. Each has a unique ID, and it's populated from the URI column. And there are various relationships between the artifacts that we're importing that we can specify here, and how we determine how we actually do the mapping, whether or not we're mapping by URI or mapping by preferred label. And then at the bottom, we have the metadata. So we're setting if it's, what the default value is, whether it's not null, is it a primary key, etc. So this has all been defined in our template, and I'm now going to import these into our spreadsheet. So let me now press the button. And that's our import completed. So now we should see underneath schemata alongside HR 360 and Northwind, we have the Traveler database, we have the Traveler application, and then we have our tables defined and indeed our properties in there. Cool. Right, so that's the import. But what's actually happening in the background is all these input values are being queued up for approval. So they've gone into our task. They haven't gone any further because they need to be approved. And I can, I don't actually have the level to be able to make those changes. So we can apply various levels of governance to this process. So what I would do here is contact the person who has the permissions and get them to approve the changes. So let me now log in as the administrator. I'm going to go into Knowledge Model Manager because it's a power user tool. Everything is done from there. Select my data inventory model. Go into the task that had the updates. Look at the changes awaiting approval. And I can look at these and make sure I'm happy with them. Who made the changes? What are the changes? And if I'm happy with them, I will commit them to master. And let me just make a note. Traveler database added. Spell Traveler properly. And then I will commit the changes. And now if I now go into the master copy of the model, you can see those changes are in there. And now they're in the master copy of the model, they can now flow through to the semantic data catalog, which I'll come on to and show you at the end. So that's how we can delegate updates to the model to various teams. Now we have there are other approaches to that. So let's now look at the business glossary. So as I said before, the business glossary is actually maintained by 3 other teams. There's the finance team, the sales and marketing team, and the operations team. So actually, let's now look at those models. So here we are with this is business glossary, and these are the models that go to do it, update it. So if we were the sales team, and we don't want them to be able to change any of the other definitions that are outside their remit. And we also, we don't trust them with the power user tool. So what we're going to do, I don't blame them, I'm part of the sales team and I would probably do the same thing. What we're going to do is we actually have a second interface. So let me now log in as sales. And let's go back to Semaphore. And what we could do with the sales team is rather than give them access to the KMM tool, we give them access to what we call the knowledge review tool, or KRT. Now this is a much simpler interface. We can restrict not only what they can see and what they can change, but actually what aspects of that model that can be changed. So we've got everything is changed. Any changes are very firmly controlled, which you see shortly. So what we've got here is when I'm using the knowledge review tool, I can only see the sales and marketing glossary. I can't see any of the models that exist. I'm going to go into here. This is the only review I have open, and I'm going to use this to make changes. So what are we seeing? So we have, it's the same, fundamentally, it's editing the same thing. So we're actually making changes to a task that's part of a knowledge model, but we're doing it in a much more simplified interface. So let's imagine I wanted to add, I want a concept of sales automation. So the first thing I want to do is see if it's already there. So I'm going to start typing. And it's telling me, no, I don't have anything called sales automation. So let me type it properly. There we go. So I don't have that in the model. So let's add it as a concept. So now it's starting to ask me to fill in information. And in this review, I've enabled everything. So I can make changes, but you can absolutely lock down what you want people to change. So you may actually say, I only want them to let them change the label and really provide one piece of metadata, and I'll do the rest. But in this situation, I can edit anything. So I've got sales automation. It's asking me for Spanish translation because Semaphore is fully multilingual. So let me grab my Spanish translation. I do apologize if anybody speaks Spanish. I was relying on Dr. Google. So there's a Spanish translation. What type is it? The only thing I can add is a glossary term. I can't make any other changes to the model. Add an alternative label. If we had any defined, let's put Salesforce automation in there. Salesforce management. And next it's going to ask me some metadata. So let's provide a definition. And there's various types of data we could ask for. So we're going to add a definition. And then we're going to add maybe a reference to the source publication. So let's copy that one in. And hit next. Define relationships. Well, Salesforce automation is strongly linked to customer relationship management. So let's create a concept of CRM. I forgot to clean out my model. So sales automation is very strongly linked with customer relationship management. So let's create a concept for there. So customer relationship management. Oh, that doesn't seem to be, that's not in the model. Now, what I don't want to do is park what I've done, go back and then fill in a customer relationship management, and then come back and fill in Salesforce automation. But what I can do instead is I can create a to-do. Oh, did that actually take? Yes, it did. And then I can, that creates a placeholder, which I can come back to later. So I'm going to say next, review my changes, and I'm happily going to update the model. Sorry, I'm going to update my the model in my review task. So this is sales automation. It's related to customer relationship management. It's not sitting anywhere because I don't have that ability. But let's see what's happening behind the scenes. So we're going to go back in to let's go back into Semaphore. Let's log in as admin again and see what's happening behind the scenes. There we go, admin. Go to models. We were in the sales and marketing glossary. This is our review task. Now let's see what we've got. We have in there, we have a, this is the concept we added. So we'll automatically, anything that's been new or changed is being flagged up. So we have sales automation here. And what I can do is look at the definitions. First thing I really want to do is look at the history, see who made those changes, and if I trust them to know about sales automation. Sales should do, good. So we'll accept that. So then I want to do is I can accept these changes. The first thing it's going to ask me is where do I want to put it, and I'm going to put it under the glossary. There we go. Submit that. And I probably also want to pop it under functional areas as well. And we have sales and marketing teams. So let's broad concept, sales and marketing. Here we go. Save that. Then I will now, what's happening behind the scenes, as I said before, everything is being queued up into awaiting approval. And I'm going to want to commit these changes. So let's say Salesforce automation. Sales automation. Great changes. I know those changes have been committed through to the model. We haven't committed through the to-do, that hasn't been completed yet. So it's only the completed concepts that we've accepted are committed through to the master copy of the model. So now, if we were to go back into our business glossary, let's look at the business glossary. And remember, the business glossary is built from the sales glossary, the finance glossary, the operations glossary. We now look at our master copy of the model. In our master copy of the model should be sales automation. There we go. So we've added that into the glossary, and therefore by definition, what we've also done is that will now flow through to semantic data catalog. So let's actually do that now. So we're going to go back to knowledge model management. We're going to select our semantic data catalog. And then let's look at our changes. So this is the master copy of the model. And let's see what we got. So now if we were to pull up sales automation, here we go, it's there. It's not linking to anything. It's from our glossary, but then it's now in our semantic data catalog. Let's start to tie it together. Now we want to actually record which systems are using it. So we will now record where it's stored, and it's in Salesforce. Who performs the function? So let's link it to relevant to the sales and pre-sales team. And let's, while we're there, look at the sales and pre-sales team. Look at what are they up to? So we have them, they contribute to Salesforce. They require sales automation. They require competitive analysis. They use Northwind database. And they also use Salesforce. So now what we can start to do in the semantic data catalog is really start to make these links going right across the organization. So we're going from a concept in the conceptual level down to a concept in the logical level. And if necessary, you could actually go down into the physical level. Obviously, you don't want to do it for SharePoint or Salesforce, but there may well be private proprietary applications developed by the company, by the organization, where it would make sense to do that. Right, so that's the semantic data catalog, and I did promise to show you the benefits of using Semaphore. Now, if we and this really comes from the fact that anything with the semantic approach, you can model anything. So within our semantic data catalog, and as well as having the schemata, so this is where we see our HR360 and our Northwind and our traveler databases. We also have a definition of compliance. So this is coming from, I think you saw it at the beginning, the data governance model. And what we've done is we've modeled just some compliance regimes. So we've modeled GDPR, we've modeled PCI DSS, we've modeled PII. And what we mean by that is not only are we recording the details, so what is it, who monitors it, what we also and which systems need to comply with it, but we can also model, because it's a semantic, this is a semantic tool, we could model what it means. So we can model what are the entities that are managed by GDPR. It's email, it's address, it's names, it's religious references. What does PCI DSS cover? Well, it covers credit card numbers, and we could model PII information. So, what do we need to manage from a compliance perspective? And these are all entities that are defined within Semaphore. These are all meaningful to Semaphore. These are just things that the NLP engine can find automatically. So we can define them in our model. We can tie them into our infrastructure, but can we actually use them to get a better business outcome? And the answer, you won't be surprised to hear, is yes. So if we go to Semaphore, back into our Semaphore screen, and we go to this tool. So this is a view into our classification server, which is the component of Semaphore. This is all about enriching content. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop in a document that it's actually a white paper on using semantics in an intelligence gathering background that I wrote a while ago. So it's a Word document. It's relatively large, and it's talking about semantics and what a knowledge graph is and the various aspects of a semantic model and that kind of thing. So if this was sitting in a SharePoint library, straightforward. It shouldn't be an issue, should it? But if we can actually scan it using our model for compliance, we might get a different story. You can probably guess that we will get a different story, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. So on the left, we've got, this is what we read from the document. So this is just the text we've retrieved from a Word document. And on the right is lots of different items of metadata. So we're using entity analysis. We're looking for different aspects in this data. And I'm going to filter most of these out just to show you the regulation. So what we're actually saying is this document here might be a white paper on intelligence gathering, but it needs to be held in a GDPR compliant system. Why? Because it's got names written all the way through it. And if we wanted to see who the names are, then we can just expand that. And we got, my name, Mr. Putin, John Smith, and a few other people. Now, these are real people. And so we need to protect, well, John Smith isn't, but everybody else is. So we need to protect this document. And the only other way I'd have known that is by literally reading through however many pages of this document there are. But also we've got the PII being flagged up. Okay, that's a PII number. Now it might be valid, it may not be valid, but it doesn't matter. We still have to, we flagged it, so we can use that treatment. We can use that when we actually need to process that document. We can move it into a protected library. We can queue it for manual intervention or whatever we need to do. So this is really what we said about the additional benefits. So once you've moved into adopting a semantic approach to your data, all sorts of additional benefits will flow from there. The ability to use your model to actually analyze your content and determine how it fits into your structure. So I hope during the course of that demonstration, I covered off the benefits of standard definitions, how we can democratize access, and importantly, how you can use these semantic view of your infrastructure to improve your compliance and data quality. And Philippe, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Steve. There are quite a few takeaways that we can reflect on today. The ones that stayed with me were really how governance can reduce the overall cost of ownership. And this is mainly through modern governance's way of using collaboration and access to information. Of course, the supporting AI journey and deeper analytics are really what is hitting most of our clients right now. So I'm happy that we were able to cover some of that today. Obviously, what we discussed today was deployable across any industry. Semaphore is used in all of these industries to help our clients with their governance needs and also their data classification needs. And as we touch on Semaphore, it's obvious that your governance strategies will be using in the future the specific context and business priorities that are modeled within Semaphore, leveraging those to define your metadata, build metadata, create metadata in order to have better data harmonization, in order to fully integrate your data, your systems, your environment, and your entire business to deliver more value for your customers and users. As you undertake your data governance journey, traditional data governance involves key people from the CDO on down in a traditional singular or centralized view. What we're proponents of with the Semaphore and semantic approach is to involve subject matter experts and stakeholders across departments so that data governance can evolve organically by getting their collaboration throughout the process. Now over to Philip for some Q&A.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Steve. That was a great demonstration of just some of the power behind Semaphore. It was really good to see. If I could ask you, gents, to turn on your cameras and join us live here. We've already got a few questions that have come in via the chat, so I hope you can all hear me. Let me start off with one of the questions that came in on the chat, actually, which is, who defines the relationship between the concepts? I think, Steve, that was during your presentation.
Yep. No, that's sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And the answer is whatever makes sense in your organization. So the demonstration is showing, I had a separate sort of model that contained the definitions of the classes and the concepts and what the relationships were, and that was linked in as required. But in a knowledge model, it's not just the concepts, the artifacts, the entities that you have, it's also the relationships as well travel with the model. So if you have a sort of relatively centralized conventional governance framework, then yeah, somebody will sit down and go, these are the only relationships I'm going to define. But if you have a decentralized model, then absolutely each team can define the relationships that make sense to them. And then as those models are included into the semantic data catalog, then they become available to the wider audience.
Yeah, you're really sort of extracting institutional knowledge and then kind of mechanizing it on a sort of machine level. So yeah, it's
likely to be reused. Yeah.
And another one was, can the classification function do the same thing for an Excel document, say, for instance?
Yeah, it can. Semaphore is very much specific, focused on words and text. So if you've got an Excel, like an RFI document, absolutely you can process the text in a spreadsheet. We have about 300 formats that we'll support. So we strip the text out, process it, and then pass back the metadata. So absolutely you can use Excel for that. Yeah,
and I guess that's where a lot of people start their journey. We've got another question just come in here, which is, can you expand on how data governance can be used to support my AI strategy?
Yes, it's a necessary first step. So there's a lot of I don't know if anybody's who's on this call has attended any of our other webinars with my colleague Imran Chowdhury on using sort of unstructured content for the process with generative AI. But the implementing a decent governance mechanism is a necessary first step, because the benefit and the companies that will do most out of an AI process are the ones that actually have their own content they can deploy. And obviously, to be able to deploy your content to get the best out of Gen AI, you've got to know what have you got, where is it safe to use? Has it got PII in it? Has it got is it, for example, if you might have as well as PII, you might have IP, you might have intellectual property. You don't want to go outside the firewall, so you want to make sure documents that describe that don't go anywhere near Gen AI. And so you need to adopt something like Semaphore to be able to look into your unstructured content, manage it properly, and mark up what can be used and what can't be used, and then you can exploit that using your Gen AI using that content.
And I guess as well, it's kind of like it can help you, not maybe eliminate, but certainly help you identify bias within your data as well. Because if a number of terms keep cropping up in that data, if an age group or a location or something like that keeps cropping up, and that's relevant to your project, that you need more scope, you can kind of identify that in the data. So yeah, really interesting. And Philippe, could you expand on sort of how you get started with the data governance project? Because they always seem like you're trying to climb a mountain. So what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think that is probably why data governance projects don't start, is because they seem like mountains. And I guess how do you start? You start small. You start with something probably that you already know about, that you have relative control over. And what we're proponents of it is that that you iterate, that you start with something like a department or a particular business unit, but then you learn from those lessons learned, and you kind of move on through the enterprise. It would be a mistake to kind of try to build a global ontology for the entire enterprise and start there. That would kind of be a non-starter. You're not going to get people to buy into it. It's better to go with success and then build.
Yeah, and I guess finding those things that are also going to deliver that value about extracting that institutional knowledge and kind of leveraging across the business. So yeah, look for those opportunities as well. Just had a comment coming in, somebody requesting a link for the recording. We'll make sure that you get a link to the recording that goes out. You can either go to our YouTube page, it will be available on our website, but we'll also send an email to anybody that's attended so that they can get that out to the rest of the organization. So thanks very much for sharing that around. I hope your team find it useful. There's a question here. So it says, how will you handle linked data in the business model? For example, there's a team assigned to track all employees, and they've saved all of this information in a SQL database. How would I link to that data from Semaphore?
Good one. Good question. So there's kind of four steps. There's kind of 4 steps to that. 4, 3, 4. Okay. First step is import the definitions of Semaphore. So that's what I was hoping to show in the demonstration, where you can just import a spreadsheet with your definitions and the properties and of what you want imported. So in this case of SQL, it'd be rows and columns, not rows and columns. I'm sorry, tables and columns. Import those in, and then making sure it's tracked in the logical model. So who manages it, who uses it, and what compliance regime applies to it. Then the next step really is to this is where the feedback then comes in, and sort of the benefit of the system is to use the use the information that's in that database. So you can start to use it as reference data to start to enrich your you can enrich the conceptual model, and you can start to what's the word I'm looking for here? So people skills, experience, projects. So that builds. You can use what's the information in that database to actually populate your knowledge models, and then the final step is to actually start to use those in other applications. So you've got your knowledge, it's managed, you know what it is. You're starting to then say, okay, now I want to link it to an expert finder, or resource scheduling, or a project scheduling, project staffing. So you make it once you've managed it in your data governance model, you've got it into a form that can be used by other applications. Make it available to those applications.
Yeah. And I just had this thought just where you said that people finding expert. I guess as people fill out these knowledge models and as they become, offer their subject matter expertise, they're then easily identifiable for future cases where you go, who looks after this? The perennial question in a large enterprise organization.
Exactly.
Oh, well, actually, he's responsible for maintaining that knowledge model. It's probably him. I'll go and have a chat with him.
Especially if the situation where that maybe you have a repository, who's responsible for this repository, and if maybe the model's incomplete, somebody hasn't filled it in. But if you know the business functions that model serves, because you know what aspects of the business glossary are held in that system, then that gives you a good idea who the audience is. If you need to make any changes, bring it down, upgrade it, enhance it, whatever.
And that really, you're upskilling your business internally to become more data centric, to become more information centric.
It's kind of like Wikipedia. When Wikipedia people came out, people are thinking, well, why do I want to update this? And then all of a sudden I think, hang on, if I put a bit of effort in, I get all these results, and you get this kind of sort of beneficial, I can't remember the right word, but beneficial circle. People realize that if they actually put a little bit of effort in, everybody gets value out of it.
Yeah. And Philippe, can you give us some examples where we've been successful in like large organizations where they've leveraged a modern data governance approach to drive the business value in that data?
Yes, well, I'm familiar with myself, mainly the tech industry, large B2B software providers, but obviously we're heavily into large pharma as well. There's governance is really very much a program. It's almost a following, and where they're finding the most success is really where the program is well established. It's not just the tool helps, but it is where kind of the organization is behind it. And I'd say that you can find it in any flavor of industry, company, etc. It's simply a matter of people finding importance in doing governance, and usually that's where data is very important.
Yeah. There's been a request for somebody to reach out to you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of wrap up there because we've got lots more questions I think that have come through, and I don't think we've quite got the time. Let me just share my next screen so you can get a hold of. You can get a hold of these gentlemen. There we go. So yeah, you'll find Philippe and Steve's details there. So feel free to. But coming up after this webinar, we've got, and because I know that there was plenty of questions on AI, we have an AI roundtable featuring a number of my colleagues from both Semaphore and our sister technology, MarkLogic. We're going to be looking at a whole host of different topics with the rise of generative AI in the enterprise space. So feel free to register for that. It's on the 7th of March, 3 p.m. I believe. Sorry, 4 p.m. GMT, 11 a.m. ET for our colleagues in the US. Steve, Philippe. We'll make sure to check.
That could be Jim if you like. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Hey, look, let's give them the work. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your presentation. Steve, thank you very much for that demo. I hope that's given you some ideas around how to apply modern data governance in your business. Hope it gave you an idea of how Semaphore can be leveraged in this use case. And we look forward to speaking with you guys again soon. So thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.